Today I wanted to go over how to make an electric bike battery using lithium polymer cells from Hobby King. Now these are supposedly 5 amp hour 3.7 volt cells, but the strange thing is this cell here is a 5 amp hour cell also, which came out of another LiPo. Now it's quite a bit bigger and it weighs a bit more as well. So if you put this one on the scale, it weighs 133 grams. Now if you put one of these ones on, it's 115, so there's a bit of a difference there. So I'm not really sure about that one. Now before I wanted to make a LiPo battery the cheaper way by getting an existing battery and disassembling it, a 5 cell battery, but it turns out that some of the tabs are spot welded together and some are made out of aluminium and you can't solder to that at all. I've no idea how you do it, and I don't have a spot welder. Although some of the cells that you do get out of them, they are got nickel tabs on them which you can solder to, but it's only like maybe 1 or 2 cells in a pack that will have that. These are, or you can order these as single cells. They're about £8 each, I think. They're a wee bit more expensive than buying a pre-made LiPo, which I think is a bit stupid, but oh well. But before you start doing anything, you want to test each battery with a multimeter to see that they're all good. Now an acceptable voltage for each cell is about 3.8 to 3.85 per cell. Now if you receive a cell and it's like at 1 volt, contact Hobby King and then tell them about that. So both tabs on these batteries are nickel, at least I think they are. That's what I've heard that quite a lot of the battery tabs are made of, and these will solder no problem with using just a bit of flux and a normal 80 watt soldering iron. You can use a bigger soldering iron if you like. Now the way I do it is I would just wipe every battery down with some rubbing alcohol, and then what I'll do is we'll find a nice corner that you can put them in, just to stack them neatly. And then you'll just put one down, and you'll put double-sided tape on it, and then you'll just put another one on top of that. Because what we're going to make here is a 44.4 volt 5 amp hour battery consisting of 12 cells. Obviously with it being 5 amp hours, it's not made much for range, but it's made more for speed. So I would use my normal main batteries to go the distance, and if I wanted to go faster then I could just put this one on and that will give me some higher speed. This battery will be 222 watt hours. The ones I've got just now are 37 volt 15 amp hours, which is 555 watt hours. So all we're doing now is just putting our double-sided tape on. About 4 pieces should do. You want to get plenty on there because it keeps the battery nice and secure and it's not going to fall apart or anything like that. Now I don't like using a battery management system because, well, they can be quite hard to get a hold of. So what I use is just a normal RC battery charger, and they're very good for it. As long as you don't over discharge your batteries, you'll be fine. I use the Power Lab charger. So, and then all you do is you'll just take the white bit off. Once that's done, put another cell down on top in the opposite way. Now you've got to make sure you get this right first time, because if you try and pull these apart, then what could end up happening is you could actually rip the foil that the battery is made out of, and then you start getting a strong smell and it could possibly go on fire. So just place it right in the corner and push it down, press firmly. That's it's got 2 cells done, and then just repeat until you've got the whole battery made. And arranging your tape in this sort of pattern should give the strongest battery, which is not going to fall apart. So to give you an exact figure, these cells are actually only £6.07 each, but still it is quite a bit more expensive than just buying a pre-built battery. But at least you can solder it very easily in your own custom configurations. You can easily parallel the cells up to give you more amp hours. But whereas with a normal LiPo, you've just got the output leads to work with for paralleling them up, and then you've got to solder all the balance cables together in parallel, and it's just, you don't end up with as neat a battery. So this really is the best way to do it. So that's them all stuck together, and you just need to solder them up. Now, most RC chargers can't balance any more than 6 cells at a time, so you're going to have to actually solder it together as actually 2 separate batteries, and then solder on 2 balance cables. And when you want to charge them, you just connect those leads in parallel, like I do on my other bike batteries that you saw in another video, and then you just do it that way. 10 cell balance chargers are quite hard to find really, and they can sometimes be quite expensive. So all you need to do is get these off eBay. These are 6 cell balance extension cables, but you can cut them in half and connect them to your battery. Now I often find that it's a plug end that can wear out quicker, so you'd probably be better putting the socket end on the battery so you can replace the plugs easier rather than desoldering them for the battery if they wear out. These are just normal JST connections. I got these off eBay for £1.89 each from the seller Play Gadgets, so that was quite a good deal. Maybe what you want to do is when you do get them, you may want to put a bit of hot melt glue around the socket end of it there, just to make it more sturdy, because if you flex that too much the wires are just going to break off inside. And also do the same on this end as well. That's what I do on all my balance cables, and it makes them last a lot longer, plus it makes them easier to plug in and remove. So the next thing to do is apply flux to each tab, and then you'll lightly tin it with solder after doing that, and then use long nose pliers to bend them neatly together, and then you'll just put your heat on and then create a secure join. They don't need a lot of flux, just enough to very lightly coat them. And then you just solder them together and then stop halfway, because these will be charged in parallel and discharged in series. So what we do is we just put a little bit of solder on each tab. Be very careful not to short the batteries out. Make sure it's coated nicely, and do the same to the other tab that will go down on top of that. Could have maybe used a bit more flux on that one, so just add a bit more. There. Now just solder down. Be very careful not to short them out with the iron. Then once it's hardened, just take the tool off. If this happens and you can't get any solder to stick to the tab, just rub it down with sandpaper and then reflux it and then solder it again. It seems that the tabs actually appear to be made out of nickel plated copper, because after sanding that you can see that there's copper underneath. So we'll put the iron back on that and see if it'll tin up and solder properly, and that seemed to work nicely. So the best technique is just to set the whole assembly on its side and then quickly apply solder to each tab, and do it quick enough so that the flux doesn't burn off the other side of the tab, or else you have to sand it because it leaves a residue. And then you'll just turn it over and do the opposite side. Just add a little bit of flux to each one. So as you can see, it's started to burn on the other side, but this it shouldn't be too bad. Now you often find with these soldering irons, it's like the tip on them melts. So every now and again I just switch it off before it gets to that stage. Always been very careful not to short anything out, and then just continue tinning all the tabs before you solder them. So that's us done so far. There's our negative there, which goes to the positive, and that's the first half of the battery. That positive then goes over to the next negative, which goes through on the second half of the battery to our positive here. So now we need to put our connectors on. All I've done here is soldered in the balance connectors directly onto the tabs. They are a bit flimsy, but what we're going to do is encapsulate the top of the whole battery in hot melt glue, and then this should go in quite sturdily, and this is our series jumper that will go in just to link the batteries up in series when we're discharging them, and that'll plug in there. All we need to do now is just solder on the two balance plugs and our positive and negative cables. I'm not sure what connector I'll put on. I'll maybe just put the same bullet socket style. So that's all the soldering done. So all you do is you put the negative of your balance cable to the negative of your battery, and then you just put each cable that comes next onto each next interconnect until you get the positive cable of your balance connector. Now a 6-cell battery balance connector will have 7 wires, so you can see how it's wired up here. Now it just goes onto your connector, and these will be connected in parallel during charging, but never ever connect the two balance connectors in parallel while you've got this jumper in, or else it will short out. The final things to do are put coloured heat shrink around the connections here, and then completely encapsulate the top of this in hot glue, and then wrap it in rubber and duct tape. And finally you just want to heat the glue up with a heat gun to get it to all even out. I was thinking about putting sheets of rubber around it, but what I'm going to do is just put sort of hot melt glue corners around the edges, and that should kind of protect it from bumps. But that's the top done now, so I'll just need to wrap it up completely with duct tape and it should look not too bad. And now just connect everything up in parallel and charge it quite slowly. So with it in parallel, you've got a 6-cell 10 amp hour battery rather than a 12-cell 5 amp hour one. So we'll just charge at 5 amps. As you can see, things are a bit imbalanced, so we're charging it quite slowly to give it a chance to balance out all the cells, since they are new and some were at 3.8, some were at 3.86 when I got them. They were all at different voltages, but none of them were below 3.81. So just leave that all to charge and we'll see how it gets on.